and welcome back to the Publisher Podcast from Media Voices. I'm Peter Houston, and we're exploring the people and the products powering publishing, both through this podcast and in our adjacent weekly newsletter, which you can sign up for at voices.media. This week I spoke with David Adeleke, founder and CEO of Communiqué, a media business that analyses African media and the continent's creative economy. Communiqué started out as a newsletter, but now runs live events and publishes research looking at the scope of the creator economy across Africa. It's been 4 years since I last spoke with David on the podcast, and a lot has changed since he set up his newsletter as a side project. David and I spoke about how he'd always wanted Communiqué to be more than a newsletter, and he explained his vision for what he called a proper media business. Now he's hiring to build a culture that can be replicated elsewhere, and how through developing collaborations and partnerships and sharing his learnings, he sees himself as an ecosystem builder. But first I asked David what had changed since we last spoke in 2021.
When we spoke, I was running Communiqué alongside another job. I was running it as a side project. I I always had some idea in my head that this was going to become something on its own. It would take a life of its own. I just wasn't sure how that was going to manifest. August last year, I left the job at Rest of World. I was told that my contract was not going to be renewed. I didn't see it coming, but in hindsight, it's a massive blessing in disguise, because what that did was it allowed me to now focus on the thing that I truly loved and cared about the most, which was Communique. And the next step was then to figure out how to make Communique an actual viable business versus a side project. So the last 1 year has been a grueling journey in figuring out how to build a sustainable business. But it's been so exciting, and I meet people all the time, and this is, I'm not overstating it. I actually meet people all the time who have either been impacted by our work or genuinely love it. They love it, or they're curious about what we do. They want to learn more. So I'm happy that this is where I am now. It's no longer just me, which is also good. There's a team building this with me. I was able to convince a handful of other curious young people to embark on this journey with me, and I like to think that they're enjoying the process as much as we're all suffering together. It's positive suffering, I guess.
Positive suffering is a great phrase. Did you realise that you couldn't do it on your own, or did you decide you didn't want to do it on your own? What was the process there?
I decided I did not want to do it on my own, because there is a vision or a version of community that I have in my head that requires other people to play a part. I didn't just want to build a company, I wanted to build a culture. And you cannot build a culture on your own, right? I want a situation where people can come into a setup or a system, learn specific behavioral patterns, learn a way of seeing things or seeing the world, and then after some time, they take what they've learned to other parts of the world, or other places. So, in that way, I am essentially replicating myself, or to sound less egotistic, I am essentially replicating a way of seeing the world and a way of doing business that I think is much better than what I see in a lot of places around me. So there is an element of cultural duplication, but at the same time, there is the element of vision. There is a version of Communicate that I see where we are much bigger than just a newsletter. I didn't just want to build a newsletter company. I wanted to build a proper business, a proper media business. And so I thought that bringing more people onto the team was the best way to do that. And it shows in our hiring process. We are hiring right now, so we have three stages or 4 stages in the application process. The first is people get on a form. They fill out the form, they answer questions that help us understand who they are, how they see the world, what they think, just the general tendencies. And then based on how they answer those questions, we will now invite them in for a first interview. And in that first interview, they meet some members of the team. Before it was just me, the founder, right? But now there are two other members of the team. Not me. They will not meet me. They'll probably meet me at the end of it, right? They speak to the two members of the team. They ask questions about the culture. So those team members can give them the tea, so to speak. They can give them the actual gist of how Communique operates. And then when that is done, we will now do an assessment. Very short assessment. They turn it in after 3 to 4 days. And then based on how they answer the assessment, we'll now have the final stage of the interview, which is with me. In doing that, it might be stressful for some people, right? But in doing that, one, we are filtering for culture fit. We're filtering for adaptability. How adaptable are you to certain situations? How open and welcoming are you to our vision? So those are all the different things that we are able to draw out during the interview process. So all of these things are some of the reasons why I've decided that I want to do this versus just building on my own, because I could build and it's just me and maybe I will be successful. But that is just not the way that I see the world, and it's not the way that I want to do business.
I remember having a conversation with a lady called Rhiannon Davis, who's based in Glasgow in Scotland. And she started a local magazine called Greater Govan Hill. I said to her, you know what? Every town, every city needs a magazine like this. And what she said was, yes, they do, but there's only one of me. And I need to help other people be, like you're talking, share the vision, figure out the mechanics of it, the drive. One person can't do it all. So it's really interesting because you're pretty much on the other side of the world, but you're saying exactly the same things. And it's fascinating.
What I've seen or what I've learned, especially in the last few years, is that there are so many similarities that they cut across cultures. Right? They cut across geography, they cut across culture, they cut across ideology. So when she says that, I understand, because I've gone to places, and I mean this, where they say we need a version of Communique in this place. And my response is yes, but we're a small team. We can't be everywhere at the same time. But the hope is that in building the way that we are building, interacting with people the way we are interacting, we're able to replicate some of these things, so that it's like an Olympic torch, right? You take the torch. It's probably not the same torch that goes from city to city, right? Maybe they take one torch, it goes somewhere, they use it to light another torch, and then they're able to take that torch and on and on and on. And it's one flame that has been replicated on multiple torches. So that's the way that I see it. And by the way, it's the reason why we have Communicate IRL, our event series. It's it's deliberately city to city, because we feel like there is something that is going on across the continent and within the diaspora that more people need to engage and interact with. And that event series, or the event series, is our way of spreading that fire.
You've done it in Lagos,
Yes,
you've done it in Nairobi.
yes,
I think you're about to do it in Johannesburg. Is that right?
in a few days, yes.
So, what happens at those events? What takes place?
We talk about all these wonderful things in our newsletter on the internet. It's very easy to get caught up in the online conversations, and maybe some things get lost in the noise. But what we are trying to do is to take the things that we talk about online and bring them into physical spaces. So there is the element of conversation. First of all, those conversations can either be panel discussions, or fireside chats, or informal chats between between people within the audience. And then there is the element of fun. We share bingo cards because we actually call this a signature networking event because there's literally a template that we follow for every city. There will be some adaptations based on cultural and language and behavioral patterns, but the fundamentals are the same everywhere. The fundamentals are the same in Lagos, they are the same in Nairobi, they are the same in Johannesburg, they will be the same in London, they'll be the same in New York, they'll be the same in Toronto next year. So everyone has bingo cards, and the goal is before the event runs out, you've ticked out at least two-thirds of all the questions, right? So you're meeting people who tick. The point is, meet someone who has done this, who has done this, who has done this. They're usually about 9 to 12 things. And so that way you talk to, or at least you have people who can answer at least 9 of those 12 questions. So you're forced to talk to people. It's a networking event after all. So that's the third part of it. So it's conversation, it's fun, there is networking as well. So after we've done all of that, everyone has about an hour and a half. We go to an open space, usually a garden, and then they get to talk with each other. There'll be finger foods, there'll be drinks. So that's the pattern. And that's why people love it because it's really different from, you go to panels, you go to events, there is so much talking and not enough networking. We deliberately make sure there is enough talking and more than enough networking.
We've spoken about this before, the idea that there's no such thing as Africa. When we talk about African media, it's like, oh my God, that's like dozens and dozens of countries, and you can't just put that stamp on. Do you think that idea of taking one event but bringing it to different places, does that help you? I'm thinking about this from your point of view. Does that help you understand the differences in each of those locations? So it's not just about you giving something to the audience, you're also taking something.
Yes, you're very correct because before we go to a new location, we we engage with people who have been there or who are very familiar to try to understand what people would like. How do people behave? Let's take Nairobi as an example. So we have an East Africa consultant who works with us on a variety of projects, on a variety of things. She was essentially the person who was directing that and saying, hey, you're coming to Kenya. Kenya is different from Nigeria, or Nairobi is different from Lagos. There are certain things that you have to take into consideration. This is how the audience behaves, this is what people like. For instance, Kenyans are more likely to show up to an event early than Nigerians. The date that you fix the event matters. The date and the day, the time, the location, right? These little things you probably not know if you don't speak to somebody who is familiar with that market. In Lagos, we had a conversation about the film industry. In Nairobi, we had a conversation about the creative industry. And in talking about the creative industry, there was an element of film, there was an element of creators, there was an element of media. So again, different markets call for different things. We're going to South Africa now, for instance, and the conversation is about the creator class. Why? Because a lot of the companies, the big tech companies and the Western companies that are operating in Africa have their headquarters in Johannesburg. So, if you go to Johannesburg, you want to have a highly engaging conversation. You need a conversation that brings all of these big tech companies into the room, but you also need to bring the creators, the actual people that are using the platforms, that are impacted by these platforms, into the room. Because if you don't do that, it's going to be a lot of online conversations and not enough in person or face to face conversations. So, again, it's the same idea, but we have to adapt it to different markets. And in so doing, we are learning about the markets. For instance, we've learned from this Johannesburg event, this has been our most challenging event to put together so far, especially because it's almost like we need to prove to people that they should be paying more attention to us. We have an audience there, but we are new to the market. So we have to prove ourselves in a way that we didn't have to prove in Lagos or in Nairobi. So different markets teach us different things. and we're learning those things because after every event we have an event postmortem where we itemize the things that worked, the things that didn't work, what we shouldn't replicate the next time, and we even answer simple questions like, should we go back to this city again? So for instance, we know for certain that we have to go back to Nairobi at some point. When, we don't know, but we have to go back to Nairobi because the audience is asking us to come back.
You mentioned Toronto. Are you planning to take Communique in real life to other places outside Africa?
Yes, so that's the plan for next year. We are already having conversations for some of the cities. Primarily, we are looking at London, we're looking at New York, and we're looking at Toronto or Paris. Haven't decided yet on those last two, but we'll see. We'll see depending on how the year progresses. Very likely Paris, very likely Paris, because we have a lot of people who are already on the ground in Paris, and it's going to be fairly easier to pull it off than in Toronto, for instance.
Though I love the fact that 4 years ago we were talking about a newsletter,
Yeah.
and now you're talking about events in Paris. And I mean, the newsletter obviously is still there, but you've got your creator database and the creator report.
Yes. Another element of the work that we are trying to build is, apart from the media, apart from the events, is intelligence. Because so I've had a lot of conversations with stakeholders, investors, policymakers, business people, and one of the biggest questions that they have is, where can I find information about XYZ? If you get so as someone who's covering the industry, constantly talking to people, you get that question often enough, and then you get to a point where you decide, you know what, instead of having to answer this in a very disjointed way, why don't I create a solution that allows people have the answers without coming to me, so I can just direct them somewhere? So that's the idea behind the creator economy database. But that database is the MVP of an MVP of an MVP that is going to become a platform. And the idea behind the platform is, any question that anyone can have about this industry, that platform is going to be able to answer, including forecasting. So they don't necessarily have the answer to the question right now, but they want to be able to make predictions. The platform will be able to make those predictions on their behalf. So that's the idea behind what we're building. So there's a 5 year roadmap, product roadmap that we're working with. We are still in year 0.5. We're not even in year one yet. We're still in year 0.5 with the database. But I think fortunately for us, fairly recently, we put this solution forward. The UN IDO called for they made a global call for digital economy for inclusion solutions, and we're one of the 10 companies from all over the world that were selected to be able to build their solutions with the support of the UN IDO. So that's progress, right? As for the creator economy database, I'm sorry, the reports, the creator economy reports, again, it's the same thing where before we did the African creator economy report last year, for instance, would you believe that there was nothing like that? There was no report that was that comprehensive. Now, there were some articles and materials here and there, but there was no comprehensive report that was dedicated to the industry across Africa. And the proof is in the pudding, because once we published that report, it went all over the world. About, I think, more than 1.5 million people have interacted with the report since it went live, right? And the 2025 edition is coming out next month, and it's going to be even bigger. It's going to be way bigger, way more comprehensive than the one that we did the last time. But nothing like that existed before we did it. It was a partnership with our friends at TM Global, and we've done a lot of things together with them. And now we have the Nigeria version as well. So the point is, there is this entire industry that is vague. It's vague to a lot of people. However, we can help them make sense of it, we will. That's the process or the plan for what we are doing.
You're talking about these partnerships and collaborations. Is that a big deal for you to work with other people?
Yes, yes. I can't imagine a life without partnerships. I can't imagine a business without partnerships because I've seen people do things alone and they just suffer unnecessarily. I won't say I like the easy way out, but if I can make life easy for myself, I will do it. I don't like suffering. Remember what I said? Um, Positive suffering, right? I can't I can't imagine. I don't like negative suffering. I don't like it. If I'm going to suffer for something, then it must be worth my time. I mean, it must be something that I'm able to figure out. So partnerships are the way that I figure those things out.
And those kind of partnerships are all sorts, right? You've got commercial organizations, and then you've got the UN over here, but then you've got TikTok sponsoring your Johannesburg event. So it's all sorts of different organizations that you're talking to.
Yes, because I like to think I am an ecosystem builder. I can always tell when people are doing things in isolation, and it grinds my gears. I remember speaking to a venture capital firm some time ago. They released a report, and then they did it in isolation. They didn't really call a lot of partners. And I told them this to their face, by the way. This is not something I said behind their backs. I said it to their face. So you guys were doing this. You didn't think to come to us to help. I'm not interested in taking the glory from you. I don't want the glory. I just want to make sure that you've done such incredible work. And the report was so good. And unfortunately, the report has not it's still not traveled as much as it should have because they chose to do this alone. And so my mantra is, why suffer alone when you can suffer together? Or why suffer alone when you can enjoy with other people? There is no reason for you to be so inward facing when there are so many people who are available to help you. If you're afraid that someone else is going to steal your shine, no problem. Ask questions. Do your research. What is it like working with this person? Can this person be trusted? You know, if someone is not trustworthy, I can guarantee you people will talk, especially if you ask privately. So partnerships they're a very, very big deal for me. And I don't discriminate in the sense that I'm not dogmatic about the partnerships that we that we go into. Some of the partnerships are straight up exchanges. We do this for you, you do this for us. Some of the partnerships are literally us saying, let's help you do this. You don't need to pay us, you don't need to give us any credit. Because there are a lot of people we've done this for. We've helped them to get things done without any recognition, and that is fine. Because I know that in doing this for them, the ecosystem is better for it, and if the ecosystem is better for it, I am better for it as well. And then there are commercial partnerships like TikTok, for instance. So it varies.
You did have a paywall.
Yes,
Guess you had it for about 6 months, maybe 9 months,
was a year. We had it for a year.
a full year, and then you dropped it. What went on there? Explain to me the thought process behind that.
The answer to this question will tell you about the culture that we are building within Communiqué. And I say this because if it were left to me, David, I will not drop the paywall. But we had a conversation internally, the editorial team, the growth team, the business and operations team. And then we came to the decision that for now, because one, we want to reach more people, we want more people to be able to experience what we are doing, or we don't want to keep people out of the door. Let's open it up. Also, the other part was when I first put up the paywall, I wasn't quite sure how we were going to make money as a business. I had not figured out the business or the economics of this thing. And I actually said it in the announcement post saying that we're going to go behind the paywall. That I'm going from a 9 to 5 where I had a safety net to this thing full time. I need to be able to monetize it some way, somehow. And this paywall is an attempt at doing that. And so we put up the paywall, people were subscribing, people were paying. We were making enough from subscriptions to pay our editorial team. So again, if it was just me and one other person, we were okay. But there is a larger team, and I need to listen to my team members. I need to listen to them. This is not a dictatorship, right? I don't call all the shots. Yes, the buck stops at my table, but at the end of the day, I have hired intelligent people to come and work with me. I need to give them room to express themselves. So we decided that we're going to take down the paywall, but also because we were making a lot more from our events and our advisory business and our research. So it didn't make any sense for us to keep the paywall that could we could drop and give more people access to the content. So that's how come we came to the decision to take down the paywall. And people have been donating, right? We're going to go ham on this next year. We're going to go ham on this next year with the donations, and we're going to introduce memberships as well. So taking down the paywall doesn't mean that we're not going to do direct audience monetization. We will think about direct audience monetization because fundamentally it's an important part of sustainable media business. But the way that we will approach it is less from a transactional perspective or point of view and more from a communal perspective, which is people have this very strong emotional connection to what we do. If we give them more reasons to be emotionally connected, then they will be happy to give us, more out of their resources. So that's the thinking behind it.
Okay, so I wasn't being 100% honest in asking that question because I knew exactly why you dropped the paywall because you wrote about it, right? You share
Yes.
your learnings all the time.
Yes.
The listeners to the podcast don't know that maybe because they haven't seen your newsletter, but you're learning in the open all the time. One, I wanted to say, fantastic, well done, thank you.
Thank you.
But the other one is, why do you do that? What's your purpose in doing that?
It boils down to ecosystem building. The people who have inspired me are people who have been happy to share from their failures, their shortcomings, and their successes. I'm a big fan of Michael Bloomberg, for instance, because apart from the fact that he's built such an incredible media company, he shared so much. Like anyone who's followed him, watched his interviews, read the book he wrote, Bloomberg by Bloomberg, this guy shares so much that the only way that you will not know the Bloomberg story is if you've not been paying attention, right? So those are the kinds of people who inspire me. And I also come from a place of abundance. And part of coming from a place of abundance is you have to be willing to share information that helps people because I don't want people making the mistakes that I have made, right? And here's the thing, right? I don't make a lot of mistakes, professionally speaking, at least. I don't make a lot of mistakes because maybe if it looks like a mistake to someone else, that's okay. But to me, it's a very solid learning experience. So, again, part of that is the willingness to, first of all, think about what I'm experiencing and then share with people because I don't think I'm losing anything by sharing these things with people. I'm not sharing any trade secrets because the only trade secret that exists is tenacity, right? Tenacity is the biggest trade secret. And you either have it or you don't. You're either resilient and tenacious or you're not. You're either innovative or you're not. You're either willing to fail or you're not. There is no in between. So I can't I can't then gatekeep information. So that is my motivation, right? There is so much that people should know, so much that people should be paying attention to. And that's why I do these things. And I've also seen that people really enjoy this. People really like it. People like when I share these things because I don't consider myself a thought leader, right? I don't like I don't like the idea of people looking up to me. I don't like it. I actually run away from it. But I also know that people want to learn. And one thing that I enjoy doing is sharing information that helps people learn. I like breaking things down as much as possible. I like to go behind the scenes, This is I like all those kinds of things. I like to read those kinds of things, and so I like to share those kinds of things as well.
Okay, I have one last question for you. And again, we've spoken about the fact that there's no such thing as Africa when it comes to media.
Yeah.
But if I'm sat in a US or a UK publishing company and I'm thinking, okay, where can I expand in the world? First ones that comes up is India or China or whatever.
Yes.
But I mean, Nigeria itself is a massive, massive country, massive economy.
Massive, yes.
So should Western publishers be thinking more about Africa? Would you like to see that?
I wouldn't say Western publications should expand to Africa. I would say Western publications should partner more with African publications. I prefer that, I think, because that way, one, there is no air of pretentiousness, which happens a lot with these, hey, let's go to Africa, yippee, and then and then they come and they realize, okay, number one, Africa is not a country; it's 55 countries. Number two, within those 55 countries, there are hundreds of thousands of cultural variations, and so they start to get discouraged and they start to step back little by little. Or the ones who come and say, let's work with the top guns, and maybe in working with the top guns it can trickle down. No. So I would say just look for people who are already doing big things on the continent, fantastic, unique things. If they align with what you do, partner with them. Don't try to overtake or overshadow or swallow them, because we all know that in 5 years you're probably going to run out of gas, and then you start to pull back, and then you start to hear things like, "Oh, we're not shutting down our Africa operations. We are scaling back." Well, we really know what you're doing, right? So I think partnerships are they are much safer, um, especially if you do the due diligence. Because again, there is the element of due diligence that you come into a market, you're not quite sure who to partner with, then you realize these people who look so good from outside, maybe not as good as maybe not as good as we thought they were. So it's tricky, but I would always pick partnerships over mindless expansion.
Thanks so much to David for speaking with us. If you want to find out more about the media scene and the creator economy in Africa, go to readcommunique.com. And don't forget, we have a write-up of the key learnings from this interview on voices.media, or drop it into your inbox if you've signed up to the publisher newsletter, also on voices.media. We'll be back next week with another look at the people and products powering publishing's future. Until then, keep up with all things Media Voices by following us on LinkedIn and subscribing to the publisher newsletter over on voices.media.